heard of the community that is Spacecubed. It started as one place and now he's got several locations around the city. He's very much all about building communities. It started with the startup sort of ecosystem, which has grown and grown. Last year, Brodie did put his hand up to go for Lord Mayor of Perth, which just is testament to how much he wants to grow the city. Unfortunately, pipped at the post, but that's all right. Anyway, less about that today. We want to find out more about Brodie. Welcome, how are you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Brodie, tell me, when you were 15, you're sitting in class, what were you thinking you were going to do? It probably wasn't starting a Spacecube empire.
No, I don't think so. I think when I was little, I wasn't thinking about much. I really didn't do very well at school. Was sort of learn through doing, which I think is the entrepreneurial way. But yeah, while I was at school, I just didn't. Probably wasn't thinking too much about what I was going to be doing later in life. It was more just having fun at the time. I did think about a few things, so I was pretty good at sort of Lego and that sort of stuff. So building things, and I guess that sort of eventuated through Spacecube. We're building a lot of spaces and support for entrepreneurs. But yeah, I think my career really through going through university, got a marketing and e-business degree, but while doing that, went and joined the army as in the Army Reserve for 5 years. So did different things to try and work out what I wanted to do, and then joined a cruise line as marketing manager. So I did a whole range of different things, and then sort of realised there was a gap in Perth for something like Spacecube.
So how did Spacecube start? Like, what was the drive for you personally to start that?
Yeah, so I'd tried a number of businesses before over the years, but had been working overseas for about 5 years, 4.5, 5 years, for a cruise line company in the US, and moved back to Perth in early sort of 2010. And was sort of working out, well, what do I do next? And it was sort of peak of the mining boom at the time, and saw a big gap in how entrepreneurs were being supported in Western Australia, and then saw a real opportunity for, what spaces like Spacecube. I've seen co-working spaces overseas. I'd seen entrepreneurial support happening in the US and UK, and just saw a big gap in how I could actually support entrepreneurs, build a space that would sort of bring that community together. So worked on that for about 1.5 years to bring our first space into fruition, which was with the property group Stockland at the time. And it just grew from there. So, it really came from there being a big gap in the market for entrepreneur support. There wasn't, the economy was going really well, so there wasn't real focus on solving that from government or any other sort of sectors or people. And with Spacecube was able to build a model that has sustainably filled that gap.
Well, yeah, because 10 years on, and how many properties do you have now, or spaces?
Yeah, so we've got about 7 spaces across Western Australia. We've got staff in Queensland and South Australia now as well. We have a number of joint ventures, and we've invested in about 26 companies over the last 4 years through our +8 program, and then a whole range of other programs that we support. So Spacecube is really about our spaces. So we've got different brands for different types of spaces. So I'm in Flux at the moment, but we've got Riff and Fern. We manage one of Murdoch's spaces, their city campus in the city, which is for them to help engage better with industry. Port Hedland, we support a space there, Yanship, Mandurah, so all up and down Western Australia. But then programs is the second part of that. So it's no good just having a space where people come and sit and do their work. You also need the programs to support them to grow their ideas, and to support them all the way from early stage through to as they grow to much larger businesses.
Yeah, I was actually lucky enough to be in one of your spaces, Flux, a couple of years ago when I was at Study Perth. We were stationed in there for a little while, which was awesome, and it was great. It was a completely different experience for us because we were able to collaborate a lot easier and quicker with people, and with people that we probably wouldn't have bumped into otherwise, which is what I really love about the spaces that you've created. And touching on the programs, I mean, She Codes, I'm a massive fan of that one, obviously. Not that I can code a single thing, but I'm impressed with anyone who can. Where do the programs come from? Are they ideas that you and your team have, or are people coming to you, or is it a mixture?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. So She Codes was Kate Kerwin, who's been employed for us she's one of our longest employees, and she was really passionate about both learning to code and then teaching people to learn to code, especially women to learn to code, who, there are a lot of sort of stereotypes in that industry, and only about 10% of software developers are women. So there's a huge gap there. And having specific programs for women actually just increases that, making it really relatable for women to be able to say, yes, I can do this, but then at the same time, provides a really clear career path for reskilling and upskilling. So SheCodes has some amazing stats where, for every SheCodes Plus program, there's about 200 applications for 25 positions on the program. And then of those graduates, of the 25 graduates, 60% of them get jobs within the next 3 months. So it's got great outcomes, but that's really driven by Kate. So we've supported her to drive that. +8 is our accelerator program, and we have a number of different iterations of that where we invest in companies coming through the space. And that really came from, there was demand in Perth where there just wasn't early stage seed funding for entrepreneurs. So we sort of said, well, let's try and pull together partners like RAC Better Labs, Hawaiian, Mirvac, Woodside have now just come on board, East Court have just come on board. So the program's actually growing, which is amazing. And we've had some really successful companies come through there. So we've invested about $1.2 million into startups in WA through that program over the last 4 years. Those companies have then gone on to raise about an additional $11 million in a number of raising funds right now. And that portfolio is valued at about sort of $70 to $80 million. So really successful. It's a great outcome. We probably don't talk about it anywhere near enough, but we've got that track record now. And probably the last program that we run is Mesh Points, which is our regional entrepreneurship program. So I'm up in Port Hedland and Newman in a few weeks, where across WA we support regional communities to support their entrepreneurs and build out their innovation ecosystems.
I love that. My background was at WA Farmers when I first got here, so a lot of my contacts are in the regions, and I have a lot of friends who are still out there who have memberships with Spacecubes at different locations, so that they can hot desk when they're in the city, because they don't have a need for a permanent desk. So that's a great add-on as well, which you don't obviously get everywhere else. Now, everything that you do through Spacecubed is incredible, but I just want to highlight, because obviously personal branding is my thing, none of this would be possible if you didn't put yourself out there. And I just want to ask you, was that intentional, or is it just it's been hard graft and you've just, you've been so passionate about it, it's been easy to have those conversations? Are you unconscious of it? How did all that come about?
Yeah, so definitely it's something that we've put a lot of energy into, both the brand of Spacecubed, and I think now Spacecubed, the brand itself, is, I think the Mural campaign last year helped separate that from me a bit, which I think is important, because we've got, across the Spacecube businesses, so Core Innovation Hub, which is our mining energy hub, and Spacecubed, we've got sort of 27 staff, and it's growing really quickly. So putting a lot of effort into me sort of separating my brand out from that. The Mural campaign helped to do that, and that was like the ultimate branding exercise as well, because for the last sort of probably 4 years I've been really focused, especially with our marketing guys. They do not like it, because they're like, oh, but we want to promote what you're doing. I'm like, no, promote Spacecube, promote the members, promote the startups. That's the focus for Spacecubed. So that was really, for 4 or 5 years, that was where I was focusing all of our sort of marketing and branding attention. Then to run for mayor, it completely flipped, because you're essentially selling yourself. It is, it's about you. It's not about anyone else. So through Spacecube, it's been more about making sure that the business gets the brand. But then I had to kind of flip that for mayor and focus on myself, and I think that really helped, separate those brands out.
Well, even when you look at your programs, Kate is very much the face of SheCodes. I've never met Kate, but I know who she is. I've seen her about, and if I see her, I think SheCodes. So we are still putting a person behind the programs and behind Spacecubed. When I think of innovation and I think of diversity, those kind of things in the city centre, I do think of Spacecubed, and your name is one that comes top of mind. And, I think the Mural Campaign, not the result maybe that we all wanted, well, not all of us, but some of us wanted, but that's okay. I still think it did a great job of highlighting the work that you're doing, because like you said, it's way more than just Spacecubed. It's those conversations, and it's been able to bring people together. And you're working with big companies that don't need Spacecubed, as in they're not going to use it physically, but they do in other ways, because they filter resources or money through it, or they put people through your programs, or they support them financially, etc. So I think that that's really important, that you've got such a strong and respected personal brand within Perth itself to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Especially Perth is a small city, and West Australia is a small state. From a population perspective, when you break it down, there are only a handful of large companies based here, like sort of 20 odd, even including mining and energy. There's still 20 to 25 bigger companies that have the resources to really do much more innovative things. We're seeing a lot of innovation from small businesses, but not at the scale that large companies can deliver that. And compared to Sydney or Singapore, it's quite challenging to operate in that space. So having a personal brand where, 10 years now means that people trust you. We've delivered what we said we were going to deliver. People trust that what we do, what we're going to do, or we do what we say we're going to do. And those things, it just takes time to build. And especially in Perth, where it is a smaller place, it is 0.5 degrees of separation maybe, and so technology's really made that much more integrated as well. Your brand and your reputation is kind of everything, because if people don't trust you, they just won't work with you, and things move a little bit slower, so they could take a very long time to rebuild.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's brilliant. With I know that the Mural campaign wasn't successful, but it still was. Like, it still put your name up there for a lot of people. Can you talk, just sort of tell the audience a little bit more about what the process was? Because it's quite a daunting process. Because like you said, it's less about your actual policies and it's way more about you and what you've done in your track record. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, it was really, at the end of the day, it was a really positive process. So we ran a positive campaign throughout the whole campaign, and I think it's one of those things where you see politicians run negative campaigns, and unfortunately, I think in the climate we live in, you kind of need to do that to win. But that was something where that doesn't align with my values. It's not what I wanted to do. This was about painting a positive picture for Perth, not trading on people's fears and anxiety, which does we all know fear gets a much better, it gets action compared to the opportunity piece. But I don't think that mattered. I think the key thing was we were running on that positive campaign. We delivered that. Yes, we didn't win, but at the same time, what it has meant is that people around Perth and Western Australia know what I'm about. They know about Spacecubed and the good work that it's done. They know about all the good things that entrepreneurs are doing. Managed to talk quite a lot about green energy policies and the impact those could have on the city as well. And then also, and it's starting to come through now, you're seeing it, but that positioning for Perth, especially in this region, and the opportunity for that. So I think still some of those things are, I talk with things are happening, which is good. But for me, it was, I think ticked a lot of boxes. Yes, didn't win, but at the same time, people know who I am and they know what I'm about. And I think it's actually interestingly built trust. Whereas I wonder if I'd won, people do not trust politicians. So I think it's potentially built a lot more trust from the fact that, I was wanting to deliver that civic service and support the city and, put back into the city rather than not do that.
It's interesting. I had this conversation with a client last week who he kind of likes the idea of going into politics because he has a lot of ideas and really wants to make some positive change. And we were discussing it at length, and I think that it's the wrong place for him, because I don't think he'd last 2 minutes, because there would be too much red tape for him. He's very action orientated, which I get you are as well. That, sometimes externally you can actually have more impact than you can internally, which can be very frustrating, because you almost become a bit of a puppet once you go in. You've got all the best of intentions, but then you get in there and you've actually got other people's opinions that you really have to, it's not just what you actually went in there for, it's what everyone wanted you in there for, which is hard. But yeah, it's what opportunities have come from the campaign last year for you personally?
So since October was when the election was, then wave the sensor back on.
That's
So
like
since
green
the
energy in Spacecube. They don't waste
That's
lights.
right. Yeah, everything's on a timer and a sensor, so that works. Maybe a bit too well sometimes. But yeah, so since October, I've really focused on our mining and energy innovation hub in the space, because as like iron ore has taken Western Australia through the COVID pandemic, and we've been up and running with the mining core innovation hub for 5 years now. So there's an opportunity to actually really grow that, where large companies are looking for innovation, and really supporting the building out that team. So now we've got 5 staff in the core innovation hub, 2 in Adelaide, and it just continues to grow. So really big opportunities there, and lots of regional opportunities as well to support regional communities to diversify their local economies and prepare for this sort of automation of work, which is rapidly happening, especially in the heavy industries where it is a lot of autonomous trucks, autonomous trains.
Yeah.
It's a big shift that's coming, and there's a lot of work we're doing. We've just announced a core innovation hub in Newman with BHP to try and do that upskilling, reskilling program.
Yeah.
I've also then been supporting the Spacecube team, so Philly and Chandra and the broader team there are doing a great job, where we actually opened a new space in October last year with Fern. So even during the pandemic, and co-working space was hit very hard during that period, we did the right thing by our members, and now a lot of our members are growing with us. So by the end of next month, we'll be back to basically where we were in February 2020, before the pandemic hit. So that's a great outcome. Like I actually can't believe that. Our counterparts in Sydney and Melbourne are in much worse situations than that. Whereas we managed to get through the pandemic, support our members, keep everyone healthy and safe, and now we're on a growth trajectory again. So we're looking at more spaces. We've got potential opportunities in Sydney and Melbourne. So really, I've been supporting the Spacecube team to make sure that we can capture those, and then just having lots of interesting conversations with people about what some of the opportunities are next. So flexible workspace is now 100% a thing. People do not want to sign long-term leases anymore. Yeah. So it's brought forward that trend by about 10 years. And yeah, I've had actually a lot of personal branding opportunities. I'm finalist in West Australian of the Year for the business category this year, which is great. So getting lots of those sort of profile opportunities, doing off the back of that competition, off the back of that awards, I've been able to do a bunch of media, and I was born in Derby, so a lot of media in the Pilbara and Kimberley as part of that, which has been really good. So yeah, lots. I think definitely it was an experience, and overall a good experience. But I think there aren't really good and bad experiences. It's all just experience which you learn from, and it's provided lots of opportunities, which I sort of thought it would, because getting a bigger profile does help with that. I probably haven't done as much social media and that sort of stuff since the election. I've been more focused on actually delivering things, but at the same time, there's been lots of other, been able to do. I did a 9-year reflection blog post about Spacecubed and our journey and impact. Probably a couple of months ago. And off the back of that, I've had people wanting to do videos and podcasts and all sorts of things that have helped really frame that story. And I think the startup and innovation community has come a very long way in the last 10 years. And I think it's worth reflecting on that and planning out what the next 10 years looks like.
Yeah, and it's quality over quantity when you're talking about doing a lot less social media yourself now. You've kind of positioned yourself and you've done the hard yards where you've got people talking about you, so you don't need to create as much yourself at the moment, which is quite nice as well. I like, but no, I think it's incredible. I really enjoy watching your journey. I arrived in Perth in 2012, so I was aware of Spacecubed probably about 2013, 2014 by the time I became aware of it, because I was mainly out in the regions with WA farmers. But it was actually regional people that told me about Spacecubed. And we actually did some stuff with you with Ag Connect. We had an event at one of your venues, and stuff like that. So it's definitely, I like how you're kind of almost bridging that country-city divide as well, which I didn't realize you were from Derby. Maybe that's why you've done that, because you've got roots in the country as well, and you're aware of how isolated and how they need that support as well. But I mean, it all fits in together, and it's massive as well too, especially in 2010 when you think about it. It was all about mining, nothing else existed. That you took a real risk to get into that and to start something completely opposite. Like you weren't digging anything from the ground. Like, what interest did the state have in you? And I remember when the boom kind of stopped being a boom, and it was, oh, agriculture is the next big thing. And it's like, no, we've always needed to eat, and it's always nice and steady. It's just that mining's going down, that you're noticing it now. And I think that's probably one of my main concerns for WA, is that we're so like mining focused. When we think about some of the incredible stuff that's happening and innovation with the med tech, on our own doorstep, but we don't really think about it. Agriculture, like, I mean, we've got farmers that are basically farming on dust, but they're so innovative, it's amazing. But we just see the big coins from mining, and it's kind of where our focus is. So I do love that you've got that diversity where you've got inclusion. You're kind of involving everybody from the big players all the way down. And it's almost like there's that trickle effect where you're like, okay, well, we know the big players are what people are looking at. We know that's where the money's at. But it can also impact everyone else who's trying to do something as well. So that's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, I think it needs to happen. Like the fact that Western Australia has one big product through iron ore, and we've got one big customer that makes up about 45% of the state's gross state product. That's a big challenge where, if you're in your own personal investment portfolio, your super fund doesn't invest that way. And as a state, we've seen it, with what the sanctions and trade changes that China's put onto other exports from Australia. I think now's the time to really look at that and go, well, how do we reinvest some of those mining royalties? How do companies think about diversifying their customer base and also their product base? And I think Spacecube's a great opportunity, great place for people to have those innovative conversations, look at new products and look at new markets. And there's a whole bunch of startups here that are already doing that. So connecting those two worlds together makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's why I was so keen to chat to you. I've waited months for this, patiently. No, Brodie, what's next for you? We'll finish up with just what's next. What can people expect to see next?
So I think over the next sort of 12 months, so West Australia has a huge opportunity, and Spacecube will continue to grow, but Perth's a tough one, and West Australia's a tough one, where it's got sort of a natural cap, I think just driven by population. There's 2.5 million people across the state, and there's only so much that can be accommodated there. There are a lot of opportunities, like all of our spaces, refilling with people and companies growing is amazing, but we've really been looking at, Sydney and Melbourne, what are the opportunities there? And we've already got staff in Brisbane for she codes and core for, Brisbane for she codes and core for Adelaide. So I think it's continuing to grow that footprint and grow the impact we're having through growing both our spaces. And we've shifted our model with spaces recently, where we do management agreements for space. So it's similar to what a hotel does. We bring the brand, the operating structure, the staff to operate a space, to design, build, and then manage the space. So we recently did that with Fern, and then we can use that as a platform for supporting our members from there. So we're having a lot of conversations about different spaces all across Australia, which will be really exciting. And then at the same time, all of our programs are in a better position than they were before the pandemic. And I think that's because there's demand for people to reskill and upskill, and people to also start their own businesses. So She Codes is about upskilling and reskilling. +8's about upskilling entrepreneurs and giving them the resources they need. Mesh Points is about upskilling regional communities. So all of these things are in place, and I think it's just about now that the timing's kind of right to where all those big trends that were coming have sort of hit us within 12 months, and COVID really put the catalyst for that. So I'm excited about all of that. I think it's just in Perth now, we've got success stories with startups and entrepreneurs, VGW, Health Engine, all of these businesses that have grown over the last 10 years. We're now seeing them reinvest back into the startup community, whether it's through programs that they're supporting, or it's the founders getting involved, or their staff going back and mentoring or starting their own businesses. So I think we'll see that whole cycle happen over the next 2 to 3 years, which, that was a 10-year journey to get there, and those businesses have worked really hard to get there, but they've grown their businesses in WA, and I think have that commitment to reinvesting into the ecosystem here.
Fantastic. Well, that was, as always with Brodie, because he's very much about the wider community and supporting everyone else, was not just about him, but about everything he's doing and what his team is doing. Anyone who's listening, who are watching from anywhere around the world, because I know we've got listeners from Canada, Singapore, and everywhere in between, if you are looking at new locations, or if you're looking at Perth, or you're looking at Australia, like, don't, everyone kind of goes straight to Sydney and Melbourne, but Perth, there's a lot happening here, and Brodie's your man. You need to get in touch with Brodie if you're wanting to tiptoe into Perth, because he's definitely going to be the one to open gates and connect you to the right people, because you're making so much happen. You should be incredibly proud of everything that you have achieved, and I'm a big fan. I think that what you've done is amazing, and I know that you'll continue to do great things, and I'll continue to watch on. So thank you so much for your time, Brodie. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Really